Hey everyone, welcome to another top 10 list. This week's top 10 list is the top 10 fractional currency notes from the Civil War. I want to thank CW Silver Searcher for suggesting this. Now, he suggested this list to me quite a while back, but at the time of the suggestion, I didn't have the notes that I wanted for a top 10 available to me. So I had to put off his list for a while until I picked up a few more, and I got some pretty good ones, so I think it's about time that I did the top 10 list. So, CW Silver Searcher, thank you very much for the suggestion. I did not forget about you, and with that, away we go. Now, the fractional currency notes, these were put out during the Civil War because of the coin shortage. Everyone was hoarding precious metals, so the Federal Reserve, or the federal government, decided to ask the post office to step in. So the first few notes were called postal currency. They were essentially glorified stamps. So we're starting off with number 10. And this one here is from the first issue. You can see it's not in the greatest of shape. It is a 5-cent postal currency. You can see right across the top, it does say postage currency. It does have Jefferson on it. You've got 5 as the big denominations, but you can see in the center, it is very, very reminiscent of a postage stamp. So they, right there, you got post office on there. Take a quick peek at the back. Like I said, not in the greatest condition, but this is one of the first issue 5-cent notes. Now, this being the 5-cent note would be not only first issue, but would be one of the first notes that they did put out. So I wanted to make sure I had this as number 10. Number 9. Number 9, also a first issue. Now, being postal currency, they really ran with the postage stamp design. So when it came to doing the 25 cent, what they did was they took the image from the 5 cent and simply printed it 5 times, as if you had 5-cent stamps to give you the 25-cent designation. Once again, it does say postage currency from the post office. Take a peek at the back, very similar to the other note that I just showed. So yeah, there's the design for the 5-cent, and since you have 5-cent, they are 25 cents. So that's number 9 on my list. The first series, these are 1862, I believe. Next up, if we're talking nickels, we can go one step up to the dimes. Now, this is actually in really good shape, except for the holes. Somebody punched holes in this thing. Because of that, it's in really good shape, except for that, so I was actually able to get this for a great price. But you can read a lot on here. Postage currency, furnished only by the assistant treasurers and designed depositories of the U.S. receivable for postage stamps at any post office. So yeah, postal currency. Take a peek at the back. You can see the color on this one. On the front is really good. The back paper quality is very good. Like I said, if it wasn't for those 4 holes that were punched in it, this would be a really nice note. Now, this one features George Washington on it, making this the first time that George Washington ever appeared on a note. This one being worth 10 cents. You can see the postage stamp image here. That'll come into play in just a second. That's number 8 on my list. 10, 9, 8. Number 7. Now, this is why that comes into play. Number 7, also from the first issue. This would be a 50-cent note. Postage currency. You can see the 50 cent, and you can see the image of Washington, that 10-cent stamp that they used there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, making the value of this 50 cents. Now, once again, with these notes here, these are not 5 individual stamps. They're not to be cut apart or anything like that. That's simply the printing design on those. But by using the 10-cent logo 5 times, that implies the 50 cents. Taking a peek at the back, very similar look to that one. This one's also in really good shape. 50-cent postal currency, number 7 on my list. This is all first edition, or first issue stuff. Number 6. Number 6, we're moving to the second series. The second series all had a very similar look to it. They all featured George Washington on there, and they all had this, they call it a bronze circle. It's changed color numerous times, anywhere from dark gray to dark brown to bronze. And on some of these, this circle that's around here does tend to wear off. but this is the second issue, and the only difference from one to the other is basically the denomination. You can see the denomination here where it says 5. They do call it fractional currency. You can see in the bottom, redeemable for all United States stamps, Act approved March 3rd, 1863. So this would be the second issue. Now, these, if I remember it, they change the color on each denomination on the back because the fronts are so similar. All you're doing is looking at the denomination there, and on the back you're talking the color. So that is number 6. Number 5. Number 5, this is a really rough note, but it's one of the cooler notes, so I had to pick one up. It doesn't focus. There we go. Now it's in focus. This is a 3-cent fractional currency. Now, the 3-cent fractionals, they only made these in one series. I believe this was from the 3rd series, if I recall right. The 3rd series of fractional currency was the only one that had a 3-cent denomination. None of them had penny denominations, so 3 cent was the lowest you were going to find. It is an odd amount because you don't usually see 3-cent pieces. There was a trime, which is probably what inspired this, a 3-cent silver piece that didn't last very long, but I'm sure that's partially what inspired the 3-cent note. That and the fact that they didn't have the penny notes, so they wanted to have something a little bit lower. It's interesting that they went through all the effort to make a 3-cent note, knowing that they had a 5-cent note, just to give you an idea of how important the difference between 3 cents and a nickel was back in the 1860s. Unlike now, where you've got restaurants that used to do 5 for $5, now advertising 5 for $10. Apparently they think $5 is no big deal. Where back then, 2 cents was the world. Anyway, that's the next one on the list, the 3-cent note. That's number 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Yep. Number 4, another unique denomination. Here's a denomination only known in fractionals. It is the 15-cent fractional. If I remember right, this is from the 4th series. 4th series, 15-cent fractional. This one is odd because it's the only one to be put out, or the only series to have this was the 4th series. 4th series was the only one that had a 50-cent or 15-cent fractional. And there is no 15-cent coin. Yes, there were 20-cent coins at one point. There were half cents. There were unique denominations that way, but never a 15-cent coin. So here's an example of something that wouldn't exist otherwise in coinage if it wasn't for fractional currency. 15 cent, take a peek at the back. So yeah, definitely another one of the oddities that goes along with the 3 cent. The 3 cent and the 15 cent are both unique denominations that were only available in one series. So yeah, definitely worth getting a hold of. So that was number 5. Sorry, that was number 4. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Yep, number 4. Number 3 on the list. Number 3 is from the 2nd series, and you can see this one is a quarter, 25-cent fractional currency. And this one you can see it does have a little bit of wear. I've got the other one back here just to show the full circle versus the worn circle like that. Now, this particular one is from the 2nd series. And you can see here how they've got on the back. Now, what makes this one so incredible is that it is the first time that you're going to see George Washington on a quarter. George Washington, everybody just automatically assumes George Washington is on the quarter. He didn't appear on the quarter until 1932, if I recall. At least that's what most coin collectors will tell you. I will tell you that he was on the quarter in 1863. And most coin collectors will look at me like, what are you talking about? Here it is, George Washington on an 1863 quarter. So yeah, one of the notes that you should probably have in your collection if you are a coin collector because of the historical significance. First time George Washington appears on a quarter. So that's number 3 on my list. Number 2. Now, number 2 on the list, they also made 50-cent fractional currencies. 50-cent fractional here. This one features Edwin Stanton. Edwin Stanton was the Secretary of War under Abraham Lincoln. Now, since all of these notes were produced due to the Civil War. It is important to know who was president during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, of course, and who was his Secretary of War, which is Edwin Stanton. Edwin Stanton, aside from being the Secretary of War for the Union during the Civil War, has the coolest beard that you're going to see on currency. He'd fit right in nowadays with some of the stuff you see walking around. So Edwin Stanton, the coolest beard in history on the 50-cent fractional note. You can get a $50 made of paper. This one, like I said, is from the 4th series, and that is number 2 on my list. So what is number 1? Well, number 1, hands down, is the 4th issue 50-cent fractional currency featuring Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln, of course, was the president during the Civil War, and the Civil War was the reason for having fractional currency. However, we were not putting people who were still alive on our currency. That tells you that this was printed after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Now, as far as that goes, I believe this was from 1869, if I recall correctly. This will be, much like the Washington on the quarter, this is the first time that Lincoln appears on any currency. It's a mere 4 years after his assassination. So yeah, if you want a historical note, here is the president during the Civil War on a Civil War currency, the first time that he ever appeared, because this is the first note that was produced after his assassination. Definitely a keynote in the series. Take a quick peek at the back. Extremely bright color on this one, so this one's a proud note to have. If you don't collect fractionals, this is the one that everybody keys on. This is the most expensive note in the group. There are a couple other rare 50-cent notes, but they are made in a couple different varieties, and it is very tough to distinguish the varieties unless you're in person, so I don't mess with those. But when it comes to 50-cent fractionals, this is the note that you want in your collection. All right, guys, that was my top 10 list for this week. Once again, I want to thank CW Silver Searcher for suggesting this. Sorry it took so long to do it, but I wanted to make sure that I had good fractionals to show, not just any fractionals to show. That's my top 10 list. If you are interested in fractionals, this is a great jumping off point. There are many others to get, but these all have a little bit of a story behind them. That's why I like collecting them. If you agree with my list, go ahead and hit that like button. If you learned anything new, hit that like button. If you think I screwed up somewhere or forgot a particular note, go ahead and put that down in the comments. I love reading all those. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll just remind you one more time, if you have an idea for a top 10 list, put that in the comments. If I use your list, I will make sure to put your channel up as well. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.